Hello there! Hope you all are doing well. This might be a bit of a strange video. It's personal to me in some ways, and I'm curious to see if other people relate to it. I imagine some people will relate to it. I'm not entirely sure why I'm making this video, but something is telling me that I need to put it out there. So here I am. There's this sense that I've had all along, since forever, really, my entire life, whenever I'm playing RPGs, or really just in a more general sense, fantasy adventure type games. This feeling that I've had my whole life, and I think I can finally put it into words now. RPGs are a spiritual experience for me. My knee-jerk reaction to that is, am I alone in this? Am I the only person that feels like this? I can't be, though. If I'm having this experience, then other people must be having some kind of similar experience. Now, fantasy games are not only a spiritual experience for me. There's the other side of that coin. There's the rules and the structure, the practical side, the logical side, the down-to-earth side. And these two sides, I really don't think that they are opposed to each other. They're not enemies. They're not antagonists working to defeat each other. I think they actually are in a unison. They compose a whole, and they're supposed to complement each other. So, and I see this play out, all over the place in all kind of facets of society, and just kind of all sorts of areas. There's this, this creative side, and then a practical side or a logical side. So we might think of this as like the left brain and the right brain. So there are a lot of practical roles out there: builder, architect, mechanic, technician, nurse, soldier. A lot of the STEM fields and service-related jobs and law-related jobs and so forth. Then there are a lot of creative roles out there: musicians and actors and artists, writers, entrepreneurs, and inventors. They're also highly creative. There are philosophers, clergy, and other religious leaders. There are game designers. There are hosts of shows and podcasts. We could probably even consider chefs creatives as well. It makes me think of that part in the movie The Dead Poet Society, where Robin Williams' fantastic character, the professor, John Keating, he's talking to the students, and he says something to the effect of, gentlemen, you're going to go out there, when you get older, into the world, and many of you are going to go on to be doctors and lawyers and great architects, something to that effect. And those are noble callings, those are noble jobs, and they're necessary to sustain life. They're necessary in order for society to keep functioning. We need them. However, poetry, art, inspiration, love, these sorts of more spiritual, essentially they're spiritual things. These are what make life worth sustaining. So yeah, RPGs really are a spiritual experience for me. And what does that even mean? What is a spiritual experience? I'm going to try to define this, though, being that it's spiritual, it's usually better expressed through creative endeavors and through art and through storytelling and things like that. But I think I can get somewhere in the ballpark with the description here. So spiritual experience has to do with things like inspiration and creativity and these personal quests. Inspiration ultimately comes from somewhere mysterious. We don't program ourselves or command ourselves, now I'm going to be inspired and produce some great thing. A spiritual experience is a sort of call to adventure, and something in us hears that call and maybe even heeds that call. And it has something to do with this quest for personal development, or to access the greater potential that you have. We all feel that there's this potential that's out there and also in within us. The spiritual experience is this navigation through a mythic landscape, and you're trying to discern what is the best thing. You're trying to figure out, and you're like grappling and contending, what is, who am I, and what should I be, and what's the best thing, and what's the meaning of all this? I also think that a lot of spiritual experience has to do with the establishing and the maintaining of relationships. There's a lot to navigate and to contend with relationships. And there's all kinds of relationships. You have relationships with, other people. That's an obvious one. But you have a sort of relationship with yourself too, or, who you could be. And we see this all throughout RPGs. These quests, these great quests where you go through these mythic landscapes trying to, fight through and struggle through different challenges and to face all kinds of strange things. It's the classic hero's journey where the hero leaves his familiar world and goes into the unknown and has to meet different people and navigate these landscapes and relationships and, have this ultimate test and hopefully succeed and then gain something great, some treasure, some wisdom, some great weapon or elixir to rescue and save somebody of great value, the lost kin, the father in the belly of the serpent, save the princess, right? Rescue the maiden, save that which is of great value from the clutches of destruction and evil, and then return, bring it back to the community, bring it back to the castle, to the town. And then the hero has shared the treasure, has reinvigorated the familiar world, has brought the life back. So, RPGs, express this in many different ways. And I would say the iconic symbol of this is the delve into the dungeon, that place of the unknown and darkness and terror, and facing the dragon, that beast of chaos and terror and danger. And hopefully you defeat the dragon and then reclaim the treasure, rescue the maiden. And there's a meaning behind that. There's deep meaning behind that. When the hero rescues the maiden represents life and beauty itself. So the heroic aspect of us, the courageous, strong, adventurous aspect of us saves life and beauty from destruction and then brings it back. So that's all very, very powerful. It's very moving. In a way, it frightens me to even talk about this because it's so big. It's so greater than me. And I think if we're genuine, if we're honest about the adventure experience, we have to admit that there are parts that frighten us. But the fact that we choose to go on these adventures, that strengthens us. It informs us, or we gain some kind of knowledge or wisdom from it. And then there's the whole experience. Yeah, this relates to the whole experience part of RPGs. That's such an iconic thing. That's such an integral part of the RPG experience. The process of going through that tour of heaven and hell, that adventure, that delve into the dark dungeon and the facing of monsters, assuming you survive, and hopefully you do. You don't always. Sometimes adventurers die. But when you succeed, there's that potential that you're unlocking, you're leveling up, you're developing yourself of what you could be, who the character could be, these greater levels, these greater states of being. So when I'm talking about spiritual things, that's what I mean. I mean that non-physical, the immaterial essence, that it has a personality and it has, drives and motivations and goals. It has behavior. the spirit of a culture, the spirit of the times, the spirit of the game, the spirit of the law. So it's this non-physical side of things, but it can manifest through physical forms, through physical creatures. It can channel through. I guess that's what I'm doing now. Channeling. This channeling, that makes me think of something that's very related to this. When you get captivated by something, when you get captivated by watching a great movie or reading a great book, or even the immersion that you can experience when you're playing an RPG, it's strange how you lose yourself in a way. You can lose the sense of time and place. That all melts away. You're in a sort of other realm. And there's something inside of you that's resonating with that. It's resonating with this dreamlike experience. It's resonating with the story. It's resonating with the images. And those could be actual visual images that you're looking at, or they could be the images within the theater of your mind. So there's the spiritual side, this creative side, this side that has to do with good and evil, and that grappling and trying to figure out what's best and who we should be and what we should do. And then there's this practical side that has to do with the structure of it and defining the rules and giving definitions to things. And, there's the business side of, formatting and laying it out and putting the product together and making it cohesive and coherent and being able to market it to people and get the word out to people and distribute it. So yeah, that business side is a big part of the practical side as well. And they're both necessary. They really ideally integrate and they form this union, a completeness. There's something else that I was thinking of a little bit earlier that also has to relate to the spiritual experience. I also think that the spiritual experience can pertain to when you behold a very beautiful person. Like, we even use language like stunning, like it stuns you, intoxicatingly beautiful. Like, imagine when you see a beautiful woman. I'm obviously speaking from a guy's perspective here, but I think this could pertain broadly. When you see a beautiful woman, I think underneath, the obvious and the apparent, I think there is a sort of spiritual experience taking place. She's not just pleasant geometrical shapes. It's not a lifeless thing. She has a personality. She has a style and goals, and there's, some kind of situation she's in with, there's behavior. She wants something, she, has desires of something, and that's all part of the experience. And within your mind, there flashes this potential for relationship. You imagine, what would it be like to be by her side, to be on a date with her, or to be traveling with her, or having some experience with her. And it's kind of, that's part of why it's captivating. You kind of imagine, like, what if, what would it be like to be with her? If she were my lover, my girlfriend, my wife, those sorts of things. And so this idea of like potential and the futures that could be, and the relationships and all these dynamic things, I think that really is part of the spiritual experience. So my experience with RPGs, and like I said, it's more than just strictly the RPG genre. It's really fantasy adventure games. That goes all the way back. I'm going to try to chronologically talk about some of the experiences I've had here. So I think it begins with imaginary games with friends, like imaginary adventures with friends. And it often will involve some kind of toy, but it doesn't have to, right? It could just be, you pick up sticks to use as swords and magic wands. And, from the earliest ages I can remember of play, playing these games with friends at all kinds of different locations, and they could be somewhere interior or it could be outside at the park or the woods. And often I would be in a sort of leader role, like a storyteller role or a game master role, or like the knight who's leading the expedition, or the the Gandalf or the wizard type character who has a kind of steward of the journey type role. And then video games got introduced, and for me it really started with like the early days of regular Nintendo and like 80s arcade games. Kid Nicky was the first video game that I bought, and when I say bought, I mean like saved up a little bit of allowance money, and then my dad chipped in, and it might have been considered like a birthday present type thing. So Kid Nicky, was this very fantastical side-scrolling adventure game. And then when I was in kindergarten, my best friend Joey showed me The Legend of Zelda. And that game really fascinated me. The exploration of the open world, and the visuals is a big part of this. I can't stress that enough. The artistic quality, the artistic endeavor. And I would even get scared at times during that game. Like some of those dungeons had scary moments, like where you'd be in the dark and there'd be strange creatures moving in strange ways. And when you'd be in a room that was adjacent to the boss room, you could hear this roaring monster through the walls. And that was freaky to me. But, still this inspiration was there, this sense that I'm on some personal quest that has meaning to it. And then I got the game Metroid, which also had a lot of atmosphere and artistry to it. And there was this sense of isolation and exploring this strange, unknown landscape. And the music and the visuals and the feeling of getting lost and exploring the strange alien world, that I'll always remember that. And then I really got into Castlevania 1, 2, and 3, and then later I enjoyed quite a bit the Super Nintendo Castlevania. Oh my gosh, Super Castlevania 4. I think it's called Castlevania 4, and also Symphony of the Night on PlayStation to kind of a lesser degree. But those original 3 Castlevania games just had so much style and atmosphere, and they were so hard. There was this real struggle, of this hero, this desperate last hope, fighting and trying to learn to control himself. Those games were really hard. Those brutal platformers like Castlevania and Metroid and Ninja Gaiden, and even some of the Mario games, those early Mario games. You really had to focus and discipline yourself and hone that skill and that play control. And Castlevania really stands out to me just because it has that beautiful music that's, it's like inspired largely by classical music. And there's this real struggle against the brutality of this endless forces of evil, these just constant problems. Like that's how life is. There's just constant, goblins and vampire bats and zombies and demons and things that just keep popping up and coming at you. Medusa heads and little hopping hunchbacks. Then Dragon Warrior was my first video game RPG, and that game just enchanted me. Now I do realize that that game series or franchise is technically called Dragon Quest. For me, it's Dragon Warrior, because the games that I played, Dragon Warrior 1, for some reason didn't play 2, 3, and 4. I played those games so much, and that's what they were called then, Dragon Warrior. And this exploration, this freedom of exploring this open world and being able to get into danger and explore into zones that were way too strong, and the leveling up and the getting stronger and the finding of secret things and finding the right tools and items to make it through to the next chapter. And probably of all those games, Dragon Warrior 4 really was my favorite. I would say that's my all-time favorite NES game. Shadowgate, I have to put in there as well. Shadowgate was a tremendous experience for me. It had so much atmosphere, and it was so different, right? It was very text driven, a lot of description via text and reading, and the puzzles were just mind boggling and baffling. And this delve through this strange, magical, dark castle inspired me so much that I made the Eldritch Castle narrated D&D adventure on my YouTube channel here. Secret of Mana on Super Nintendo was a game that I really loved. It was one of my favorites. Just the style of it, the open world exploration, the music. I really could put myself into these characters of these games. The immersion was so captivating, so beautiful, so motivating, and I really had this sense of trying to struggle for some sort of goal or purpose that was necessary and meaningful. Then I got into Magic the Gathering in 1995. That's when I first got into it, and really fell in love with that game. And I still play it to this day. I play D&D a lot more, though I still like Magic a fair amount. Sometimes I feel like my enjoyment with Magic is sort of chasing the dragon. It's kind of like always trying to connect with how I felt, when I was like 13, probably when I was like 13, 14, playing that game. And I really like Magic. The mechanics of it, that practical, structured, objective, logical side of it, they're amazing mechanics. It's a fantastic game. I do have some criticisms of how the game has gone over time and the power creep of it, and I don't want to get into that. But really what won me over with Magic, what really made it win my heart was the art and the flavor text and the hint of storytelling. And that's enough for me. Just hints and little seeds of stories are enough to inspire me and to fill my imagination with all kinds of ideas of, who could this character be and what could this place be and what kind of story or adventure could this be? What kind of story could this tell? I made my first RPG. I should say this. The first RPG that I made and played with people, because I actually designed some old ones when I was much younger, but they never really got used. But the first one that I actually created and played was called Weapon Cyborg. That was in 8th grade for me. So like 14, 15 years old, highly inspired by Star Wars, like original classic Star Wars. Also inspired a little bit by some comic books, like X-Men type comic books from the 90s. And it was this incredible imagination-driven, theater of the mind-driven experience with friends. And the rules were very light, but we got immersed and captivated on these incredible, fantastical, part fantasy, part science fiction adventures and journeys into strange new worlds. I played some bits of some different tabletop games during the 90s, like the original Warhammer tabletop RPG, the original Werewolf and Vampire, Earth Dawn. I played a lot of Hero Quest, really liked Hero Quest, and played that a lot. I was usually the Zargon, the kind of storyteller game master of that game. So going on these imagination-based adventures with friends, with some visual components and some rules as well, was such an inspiring thing to me. It was this convergence of all these different things I loved, of the spiritual experience, the artistic side, the fantasy genre, the hero's quest. There's the writing and the storytelling. There are the interesting characters. There are the creatures and the monsters, and I've always loved monsters. There's this, what would we call it, religious side, psychological side, where you're trying to understand good and evil and order and chaos and spirit, like literally spirits, like spirit beings and planes of existence beyond the material realm, and like, the dreams and the signs and wonders. Just incredible. Probably the culmination of my RPG video game experiences is The Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. That might be my favorite game of all time. I spent so much time in that world, and it was such a immersive, personal experience. I think part of that is because it didn't have much voice acting. The voice acting to me often distracts things because I hear the voice actor, and it doesn't always fit so well. It's not the same thing as an actual actor, in a live action movie or in a stage play, where they can, I think, integrate better the physical experience and the presence with the words and the spoken part. So voice acting rarely works well for me. And so a lot was inside your own mind. Your own imagination would, produce the NPC's voices, and even your own character's voice. You can imagine it left so much to your imagination, and the world itself was a very unique, strange world, kind of an alien, hostile world. It was still kind of in the old school way of RPGs, where there wasn't, quest markers and stuff that would kind of hold your hand and guide you where to go next. So you had to really explore and kind of wander around and get lost at times. It's brutally difficult in the early levels, but then you could become so crazy powerful, sort of like how a D&D character can become like this demigod thing. Then I made this game called Legendscape. It was originally a heavy modification of Hero Quest. And then I played some D&D, and I was like, whoa, tabletop RPGs, remember that? And it tapped me back into tabletop RPGs. And so I made it a more in-depth, crunchier system, in some ways jankier system. I properly started playing D&D like in 2003. I had experimented a bit with it in some looser ways in like 2000, but in like 2004, I finally met a DM that like explained the rules to me and ran a somewhat consistent campaign where I could actually learn D&D, and that finally made everything click for me. And so I made a very heavy mod of 3.5 D&D, which was like Legendscape version 6 by that point. So I played a bunch of Legendscape and a bunch of 3.5. Then 4E came out, and I played a bunch of 4E. Then 5E came out, and to this day, play a bunch of 5E. And I mean a lot, like usually DMing 2 or 3 concurrent campaigns, and campaigns that last 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. Deep stories, lots of world building, lots of storytelling, lots of character development, lots of immersion. Definitely, I've learned throughout this experience that I am an immersion gamer. And now I'm remaking my own main RPG setting, Ikoros. Originally it was called Ikoria. I've renamed it to Ikoros. This is where my main D&D adventures take place. Not Mirrormorn, that was a different setting, but everything else. So RPGs, especially D&D, but lots of other tabletop RPGs, have become very popular over the last several years. Like we've been in this renaissance, or this, some people call it this golden age of RPGs, or golden age of tabletop games. That might be waning some now. We'll see. I do have some mixed feelings with how popular it's all become. On the one hand, it's great because there's a lot of activity. There's a lot of traction. It's great on the business side of things. It's just cool to see other people catching the inspiration. But on the other side, a lot of the games have become very, very corporatized, especially D&D has become very, very corporate. And also on the side of the people, right, us, it's become very caught up in meme culture, and it's become very caught up in snark culture. And I don't like that. I'm not a fan of meme culture. I'm not saying I don't enjoy some memes, of course. Funny jokes are funny jokes, but it's too much and it's too far. It's because the memes and the snarkiness and the deconstruction of things, the kind of cannibalizing of the traditions, it's too cheap. It's too easy. It's too shallow. It's like making a quick buck or getting some quick attention out of mocking traditions and mocking artistic endeavors. And these games, these experiences, they mean so much to me. They really mean so much to me. It's like my life calling. And I don't like that being turned into cheap jokes and being cannibalized and deconstructed. The mockery and the deconstruction it violates something that's sacred to me. So I don't go down that route. And you might have noticed that if you've been around my channel any amount of time. And I'm not opposed to people trying new approaches. I like to try new approaches. I think that's fine. That's part of the creative process, right? You try new takes on classic tropes. You kind of, mix things up, or you remix things. And I think that's even necessary, right? It kind of injects new ideas and new energy. It keeps things from getting stale. There's a balance that needs to be kept. We can't just discard all the traditions or make a mockery of the traditions. And when I say traditions, I mean, broadly speaking, of literature, of religion, of culture, of music, of art, of philosophy, of all these foundational bedrock structures. I'm not saying that they can't be criticized at all. I think there is a time for that. And I do think that there does need to be adjustments and improvements made, revisions made, in due time, carefully considered. But just making great sweeping changes quickly and just, tearing down the structures of old and discarding traditions, abandoning it, we will fall into pits. There are just untold numbers of pits that we're going to fall into if we destroy the traditions that are the rocks that we stand upon. The purpose of an RPG is not mere fun. It's not merely having fun. Now, you will enjoy yourself. That does happen, right? That's like a wonderful secondary effect that comes about through playing a great game, is that you enjoy it tremendously. You can be having a lot of fun. And, let's say when I'm running a D&D session for some people, for some friends, of course, we always end up with moments where we're laughing and smiling, and it's great fun. But the purpose, the point of the game is not fun. Something like an RPG campaign, or even just a standalone adventure module, takes so much time and preparation and energy, and it can potentially include all kinds of things, but personal investment is what I'm trying to say. It requires so much personal investment that it has to be something more than just mere fun. It has to have some kind of deeper meaning to it. It has to be rewarding to us on a personal level, something that's touching our lives. Otherwise, why would people even bother going through all the trouble of doing everything it takes to play RPGs? There has to be some deeper side to it, and I think we all can sense that, especially if you just take a moment and be honest with yourself about it. Really reflect about it. So I think I'll wrap things up there. RPGs, at their core, at their deepest level, are a spiritual experience. It's a sort of mythic tradition. It's something that we have inherited that has existed since time immemorial. And us right now, in the present day, are stewarding this amazing experience, this amazing tradition, and one day we're going to pass it on to others. So I suppose this is an invitation from me to you, and you can make up your own mind and choose to take it or leave it or whatnot. What I can offer, I will dedicate myself. I will continue to dedicate myself and endeavor to keep alive that classic spirit of the adventure, of the mythic tradition, to try to preserve the serious side of it. Not that we won't ever have fun, not that we won't find moments of comedy and laughter. Of course, that's going to be in there. But the point of it all is not to make it a farce or a cheap joke. The point of it all is to create something that is a meaningful experience, something that can have deeper value to it. So that's what I'm aiming for. That's what I'm trying. That's what I have to offer. Hopefully that is something that's interesting to you, or at the very least, that you can appreciate in some sort of way. Well, much appreciation for watching, everyone. Especially a great big thank you to everyone who's a supporter of mine over on Patreon. You guys are awesome and you make a big difference. I don't know exactly where I'm going to go after this video. Could be anything. I guess the sky's the limit. All right, thanks everyone. As always, may your adventures be many.